Mandy Nagy, aka Liberty Chick, is an investigative writer and researcher. That's right, give her a hand. She primarily covers the institutional left, protest movements, hacking, and cybercrime and technology. She currently writes for Legal Insurrection, where she does some great work, by the way, and Breitbart's The Conversation. She also maintains her own blog at libertychick.com. Mandy, why don't you talk about your experience for a moment?
Well, as somebody who follows the institutional left and hacking movement and things like that, I'm kind of an information junkie. So for me, it's all about doing what would be boring to most people, but I fill my inbox with all kinds of list signups. I follow FBI press releases. I dig through 990 forums. I'm looking at all kinds of information all the time, and that's where I find nuggets of information that become stories. So for instance, an FBI press release came out a couple months ago, and it was just some random information about a guy who had explosives that was being arrested out in California. And it turned out, when I looked up the guy's name, I dug a little, it turns out that he had some connections to the Occupy movement, and the targets that he was selecting were Bank of America buildings. So that became a story for me, and that just came from just a standard vanilla FBI press release. So I sign up for things like that. Another example is when I mentioned that I go through 990s, LM2 reports are the types of reports that you get for labor unions. I go to the Department of Labor website and pull those reports all the time, dig through them, and just kind of familiarize myself with what labor unions are spending their money on. Who are they giving money to? So a good example is a couple years ago when I noticed that a bunch of lunatics from SEIU were lined up at that Bank of America executive's house, if anybody remembers that story, and his 12-year-old kid was home alone. I recognized right away they were at a Bank of America building, and I thought, wait a second, SEIU owes Bank of America $90 million. I read that in their LM2 report. Let me go pull that. So I pull that, and 15 minutes later, we have this story about SEIU being on the front lawn of a bank executive who they're a deadbeat union for $90 million to. So for me, it's really all about cultivating sources, and it can be really boring sometimes. I'll go through a whole week, 2 weeks, where you don't find anything, and you spend all your time just digging through the sources. But you can't feel the pressure that you're not finding anything. You just have to wait. I mean, the nuggets will come. Really good stories will come if you're patient and you just cultivate all that. And one really good tip I'll offer is that advanced Google is your friend. Learn all of the advanced syntax. If you learn how to use Google with all of the advanced syntax, that's how you really get to dig down deep. When you just sit and Google, you're not really going to find a whole lot. You really use all of the features in Google. It's really much more powerful than people realize. Use the advanced syntax. I set up all kinds of customized news feeds because I follow things like the hacking movement. I've got all kinds of pre-configured searches to give me everything related to hackers. I follow lists on social media. I sit and monitor an unbelievable amount of lists on social media all day. I stalk hackers. I mean, but that's what you have to do. A lot of your time goes into monitoring and cultivating your sources.
But I mean, there was a smear campaign against you for some of your work, wasn't there?
Yeah. Yes, there's quite a few of them.
So,
it happens.
Some of this good work will anger them when you point it out.
That means you're doing something right.
You're doing something right. Yeah. If you're getting smeared, you're doing something right.
If you're not taking fire, you're not over the target.
This is mainly a request for Mandy, but anyone else, I mean, theoretically in the room, but anyone else on the panel, would it be possible to get sent to us via Christina a list of lists that are good to be a part of? I mean,
yeah.
Because I know there's anyone who's ever been to CPAC wakes up the morning after and they're on 50 mailing lists. Most of them are useless, but I would like to start trying to harvest good mailing lists. So it'd be very useful if we could have something like that.
Since you bring that up, actually, I have some of this information, actually, a whole list of sources too, the types of things that I dig through and the databases that I use to find things. I actually keep a page up on my blog. It's libertychick.com/research, and there's a whole PowerPoint up there that's got a whole bunch of stuff. I'll add the social media lists and stuff like that.
And if the panelists will email that information to me, I'll put it together in one document so that they're not getting tons of emails, and I'll put it on everybody that's on that. So if you do that to me, I'm happy to get it to them.
This is a story I've told Mandy before. One day I was in my office at my day job, and I tried to unlock use my key and unlock it. It didn't work. I thought, oh, something's wrong, you know, and somebody walking by said, oh yeah, somebody's glued all the locks in part of the building here. And I said, oh, that's weird. But I struggled with the key, and finally got a different key and was able to unlock the door. But it turned out that somebody had glued the super glue in half the locks in my building. And then I saw a tweet from Mandy that said that this guy had done this, and it was a story that she was pursuing. Turns out it was a guy who had gone, sort of a grad student, had sort of gone postal and done some hacking, and that's how she got involved with it. But like Donald was saying, here's a story right in front of me, and I just kind of ignored it because it was just my lock being stuck. I didn't know.
That was one of those FBI press releases, actually. It was a perfect example of that. It was a FBI press release, a story about a hacker, and it turned out that the hacker had also gone around and glued all the locks, and it was the craziest thing. I write this story about it, and a couple minutes later, he's like, wait, I'm in that building. I was wondering what happened.
Mandy, when they smear you, like you're saying, the last panel talked quite a bit about what to do. Do you ignore the ankle biters, or do you go back at them, or whatever? I mean, we've been where it's visible, we go back at them, but what's your approach?
You sort of have to assess the, assess the threat. Sometimes it's good to sort of take them on, especially in a case if they're kind of representing the bigger picture of the institutional left, like if it's something that you think is going on in general on the left-hand side. Like in our case, we decided to expose some of what was going on because it was affecting other bloggers. I mean, we were having the same people that were smearing me were also like posting things in other bloggers' names and posting like murder threats and things, trying to get them arrested. So it was, if I didn't say something, other bloggers could be affected and wouldn't even know what was going on. So we sort of tried to do that, but in some instances, you also have to assess whether or not they're just too crazy. There is a level of risk that you take on, and sometimes it's better to just ignore the crazy. So I think, in that particular instance with these people that were bothering us, I tried to get out what I could that was going to protect other bloggers. We sort of taught people how to deal with some of that. But at the same time, you have to ignore a certain amount of it because really they're just crazy. But I think the most important lesson is reach out for help. Don't stay silent. I stayed silent for a long time because I just kind of, thought I would work through it and move on. But you got to reach out for help, especially if other people are being impacted. I think you kind of have a duty to help other people through it.
And to add to that, I get attacked all the time. The ones that I respond to and the ones that I deal with are specifically really the only criteria that I use to decide that is, am I pissing down or am I pissing up? And is somebody above me, if there's some peon on the left, if me responding to them, is that going to bring them to my level, or am I going to make them into a left-wing superstar? I mean, I respond to the administration whenever they attack me, or whenever the Democrats in Congress do, but like some of the people I don't. That's a major. You also have to assess how much of your time it's going to take up. If it starts to make you unproductive, don't sink the time into it, because that's what they're about. They're all about, like, especially the ankle biters. They're about taking up your time. Don't give them that, But if it's worth the time, and especially if it's going to expose behavior that should be exposed to everybody else, do it. Go after them.